Imagine yourself standing in the middle of a busy intersection of a city like Chicago. Now, this intersection is unique for two different reasons. The first is that every street that connects to it has a different name and a different group of people that live there. So, for example, the street behind us, it used to be called Corporate America Avenue, but because I spend so much time in the tech industry, I recently renamed it Big Tech Avenue. And who lives there? Well, tech companies, SaaS, software, IT organizations, they live on Big Tech Avenue. Now, directly south of Big Tech Avenue, the name of that street is called Diversity Drive. And on Diversity Drive lives every conversation around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Black, indigenous, people of color, and their communities, they all live on Diversity Drive. Interestingly enough, that's also where I'm from. Now, to the right or to the west of us, the name of that street is called Philanthropy Parkway. And on Philanthropy Parkway live all the nonprofit organizations, workforce development programs, and really charitable organizations are intent on helping people like me get jobs. And opposite of Philanthropy Parkway, to the east of us, well, that street's called Business Development Boulevard. And on Business Development Boulevard lives the entrepreneurs, those that like to make money and generate revenue, the salespeople, those that know how to sell themselves and sell others. The second thing that makes this intersection unique is that we're not just standing in it, no, far from it. What's happening here is a high stakes game of Twister. You know, the game where you have to have your hands, feet, arms, and head in more than one place at a time. So imagine right foot diversity, left foot technology, right hand philanthropy, left hand business development. Sounds easy? Not at all, but that's where I'm standing. You see, every day I'm helping people from diverse communities, Black, indigenous people, training them on business development, how to sell themselves and how to make money so that they can put food on the table for their families so that they can get into an industry that has been far from welcoming the tech industry. You see, I lead a nonprofit organization called Rework Training that's helped hundreds of individuals go from making an average base salary of $8,000 annually to over $55,000 annually in the tech sales industry. Not only that, but I've helped plenty of tech companies have a real impact around diversity, equity, and inclusion by not just hiring people that look like me, but donating their time and talent to training individuals on how to sell themselves and make money. We have this fun statistic that we like to throw around at Rework that if you combine all of the salaries of the individuals that we've helped over the last few years, the total equals $9 million. That's $9 million going directly back into what some people like to label as underserved or underprivileged communities. But I'll tell you that being from one of those communities, we don't consider ourselves as under anything, more like overlooked and untapped. I'll tell you something else, that being here in this intersection of my life experience has drawn me to the conclusion that when you make technology companies as diverse as communities and you introduce business development to philanthropy, that you can empower people to close their own wage gap. I know because I'm one of those people. See, I grew up on the south side of Chicago in a low-income neighborhood called the Roseland neighborhood, where the per capita income is $17,000 annually for a family of four. Not only that, but I'm a high school dropout raised by a single-parent mother. I'm what some organizations would also like to label an at-risk youth. But despite being given those labels, I always had aspirations of going into corporate America. In fact, north of where I lived, I can see one of the largest buildings in Chicago that represents Chicago's skyline, the Willis Tower. And for me, it represented corporate America, a place where I always wanted to go. But as you can imagine, low-income neighborhood means low-income resources. No one there to teach me how to interview. No one there to help me with my resume. No connections to recruiters or hiring managers. How was I going to make it into corporate America? Well, there are a couple of different routes. I could take Business Development Boulevard, I could take Philanthropy Parkway, or I can go straight into corporate America. But each of those routes presents their own problems. So for example, going to Philanthropy Parkway, most nonprofits in workforce development, they focus on helping underserved and underprivileged individuals. But again, I didn't consider myself as under anything. What often happens is because most nonprofits take a charitable approach, it often feels like I have to accept anything that they give me, like I'm a charity case. And no one wants to feel like that. Not only that, because they focus so much on making others feel good, statistically what happens is that individuals walk away overly certified but underemployed. Now, opposite of Philanthropy Parkway on Business Development Boulevard, there are plenty of diverse staffing agencies and paid boot camps. And while they're well-meaning, oftentimes they will leave an individual like myself in debt, upwards of $10,000 in order to help me to attempt to get me a job in the technology industry. I will be starting in debt before day one of work. That didn't work for me either. And so what I decided to do, I decided to go straight into corporate America, straight to corporate America Avenue. But that also presented its own challenges. You know, despite my neighborhood being only a 20-minute drive away from downtown Chicago, it felt like often taking an international flight to get to corporate America. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, anybody who's ever been to the airport, no doubt, has seen the signs in the airport that says you can't bring any food, beverages, plants, animals, or anything where you're from to where you're going. And it's as if corporate America told me you can't bring your mannerisms, your culture, how you talk, your friends, anything about you from where you're from into where you're coming to corporate America. And so instead of diversity and an inclusion, it felt like diversity and exclusion. So it's said that most people spend 2,000 hours a year at work as a full-time employee. Imagine how it feels to be excluded for 2,000 hours a year. Imagine what it feels like to try to fit in for 2,000 hours a year. I attempted it, but it led me to a very painful point of differentiation, but also to the point where I'm standing here in this intersection. Despite doing my role a little bit differently in tech sales, I mastered my position as a tech salesperson. What that means is that on top of my base salary of $32,500 a year, I also brought in commission checks. And those commission checks started to exceed upwards of $10,000 on a monthly basis. $10,000 a month is more than some people in my community make in an entire year. But it also brought me two types of attention. You see, the company, they started to include me on things. They said, this guy knows how to make money. We have to ask him, how are you doing this? How are you speaking to customers? I was now included on everything. So I got a second type of attention from my friends and family. You see, I started dressing better and driving better and traveling different. And they would reach out to me and say, Shelton, what are you doing? Are you selling drugs? And I would say, no, I'm selling software. And they would often ask, like, help me out. Help me get a job in the tech industry like you. Now, anybody who's ever referred a friend will often say that it carries the same weight of co-signing on a car. Your credit is at stake when you refer a friend to a job. But despite the fact I held these friends in high esteem, these were people that I admired, that worked harder than me, that were smarter than me, and I referred them to get jobs. But unfortunately, every last one of them got declined. They got the email that said, unfortunately, we don't think that you are a good fit. And all that I can think of is that, like an international flight, you don't bring any food, beverages, plants, your culture, mannerism from where you're from to where you're going. What's more, that feeling of inclusion that I once had started to make me sick. It started to feel like they were treating me as if I was the special person of color, as if I was different. But the reality is that I wasn't the special person. I was the person that was given an opportunity. See, the technology industry, by means of business development, gave me the opportunity to close my own wage gap. And there are plenty of individuals like me, untapped and overlooked, who have given the same opportunity, they can close their own wage gap. And so what would that take? Well, it'll take more people in the middle of this intersection involved in this high stakes game of Twister where diversity, business development, philanthropy, and technology meet. You see, here in this intersection is where the real work starts and ends. Are you ready for that? Where if you are, like we said, rework, let's get this work.